$4 million appropriation to the Secretary of State's office until 2023, which helps fund some programs in the tails.
You said, Mr. Erickson, you said $4 million, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Members, any questions on the A4 amendment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So Senate File 3275 does three things for the in a larger picture here. So the Help America Vote Act appropriated $7.3 million of federal money, and also the state match, which was increased from 5% to 20%. So the state match is $1.4 million, and also the interest earned off of this money is also allocated to the fund. So that's the financial piece of it. The bill also allocates $4 million from the general fund to pay for the implementation of provisional ballots. And lastly, it allows the Secretary of State to retain 2% of all filing fees collected to go towards general security, other than elections in particular was the focus of this. There are also no added restrictions on how the funds transferred to the state HAVA account can be spent outside of what is already federally mandated. The other portion of the bill requires the implementation of provisional ballots. And you have to remember that provisional ballots is used in 47 states, members, and several of them are also same-day voter registration states. So there are only 3, Minnesota one of them, that does not do this. This ensures that the same registration verification of voter data in the statewide voter registration system is applied to all voters regardless of when you register. Provisional ballots also allow for this check to happen before the ballot is counted. Equal treatment of our voters, realizing that right now when you pre-register, you go through verification checks. And however, 21 days before Election Day and on Election Day, when you register to vote, under current law, your ballot is cast. Later, when it is found out that you are ineligible, that is too late to retrieve the ballot from the ballot box that should not have been there in the first place. So that is unequal treatment of those who pre-register and those who register during that window of time, 3 weeks before Election Day and on Election Day. So we want equal treatment of our voters no matter when they register. And the Office of the Legislative Auditor did a report on this and documented the process of registration before Election Day and their verifications, and then took a look at those who register that 21 days before or Election Day and how their ballot is cast, and then afterwards verification is done.
Senator Kiffmeyer, question from Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Kiffmeyer, you are talking about Section 5, if I'm correct, which talks about registration by electing judges and the procedures. It looks as if what you're attempting to do, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you are seeking to eliminate a person's opportunity to come and register on Election Day, and also prohibiting them from providing currently prescribed ways by which to verify the residency and anything of that particular nature in the name of saying you want them to be treated differently. So tell me exactly what you, not what you intend to say you want them to be equal, but procedurally, are you saying that based on this proposal, that if a person comes on that particular day, which is Election Day, and they want to register, which you do say that the registration forms will be there, but they will not be able to vote because their information cannot be verified on that particular day?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely, folks will be able to register at any time. And reminding you that it is a voter registration application. And so it is always a function of the information being complete on the voter registration application. But even those who pre-register, they fill out the application, and that information goes through a verification process. You can register 21 days before, 20 days before, on Election Day, after Election Day, but the point is that prior to the ballot being cast, that it would need to be verified. And so they would cast a provisional ballot, which means they go right ahead and cast their ballot, as they would in many other cases. So the difference, though, is that the ballot itself would not be counted until the verification is done. Reminding you that when people pre-register, they fill out the application, and it isn't immediately just accepted. It is verified through the Department of Public Safety, through the Social Security Administration. So there's a number of those things, and people should be treated equally no matter when they register. That process is in place. Only right now it goes through after the ballot is cast during that 21 days and Election Day.
Senator Champion, follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So how long does it take for the verification process? How long does the verification process take?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Champion. This process has been going on for a long time, and I'm sure that the Secretary of State office has gotten very efficient at it. They have electronic connections with DVS, with Social Security. They have connections with the courts for other types of information, so all of that is readily available to them.
Senator Kiffmeyer, you didn't answer my question. You only went around the block to say what all these other procedures or options an individual has, and I know that you were the former Secretary of State at one time, so I'm sure that you can answer with a much more specific answer, which is how long, because I'm sure that you've done some research before presenting this bill before us, how long does the verification process take?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, Senator Champion, I am not Secretary of State today. So every information that I've been given is that this is done on a quick process, efficiently done.
Do you know what that means as far as, is that 5 days, is that 3 days, is that 3 weeks, is that 4 weeks?
I would expect in many cases that this would be done in a matter of days.
So is it fair to say?
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is it fair to say that you don't know how long the verification process takes?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Well, I would say it doesn't take an overly long time to do that, because I believe the Secretary of State's office processes these voter registration applications, and information is actually entered on a county level, and they have automated processes, but exactly what amount of time it takes, as I say, I'm expecting it takes a few days. And that's the information that I have at this time, Senator Champion.
Senator Nelson. Senator Nelson first, then go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Kiffmeyer. This is a critical provision and discussion that we're having here at this table, and I appreciate Senator Champion's comments. And I would like to just put two things on the record and then ask for a little bit more information on that. I would draw members' attention to page 5, lines 7 and 8. So when Senator Champion asked, could the person vote? Would we be denying a person the right to vote who came to the poll on Election Day? I just want to be very clear here. The legislation is very clear. An individual who registers on Election Day, the person you were speaking of, is entitled to cast a provisional ballot. So everyone who comes gets a ballot, and everyone can vote. But the question is, when is that vote counted? And then I want to, just a little bit of history, and perhaps Senator Kiffmeyer can add a little bit more to this. But in 2002, the Federal Help America Vote Act required states to offer provisional ballots. But the only exceptions were those states that already had some voter registration, same-day voter registration by 1993. So at that point in 2002, there were just a handful of states that were not required to offer provisional ballots. They were Idaho, Minnesota, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. And so my question is, I believe even some of those states, which I'd like to get clarification on if you know today, or staff can get it to me later, even some of those states that, along with Minnesota, were exempted from the 2002 federal requirement that states offer provisional ballots, have since done so. And so I just want to be clear that this is not about prohibiting anyone from voting. You come, you vote, but the question is, when is it counted? So Senator Kiffmeyer, do you have any further immediate knowledge about these few other handful of states like Minnesota that was exempted from the federal requirement for provisional ballots? How many of those states have, even though they were exempted, have gone on to have provisional ballots?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Senator Nelson, I wanted to respond to your first statement about everybody is entitled, is able to cast a ballot. That is exactly true. And in the bill, there are 7 days at which to do that verification after Election Day, and then those ballots that have been verified will be also counted. So wanted to give that window of time. In regards to those 47 states, several of them are same-day voter registration states, and so other states who have this same-day voter registration have implemented provisional ballots without problem. Just to remind you that every single year, every single time when we have an election, but especially in a major election, a postcard is sent out after Election Day to those voters who have cast their ballot. And thousands of those come back as no such person living at that address or no such address. So we have proof that indeed those folks who are registering and have not been verified are coming back with questions about their address, that they live at that address, that it's a verified address. This is the kind of thing that should be done before a ballot is counted, not after.
Thank you.
Senator Champion to this point, and then Senator Cohen.
To this point, so how many Minnesota voters will be needlessly disenfranchised if provisional balloting becomes law? I naturally assume that you have looked at, this data and this information, and that's led to your knowledge. So can you tell me how many Minnesota voters will needlessly be disenfranchised if provisional balloting becomes the law?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't expect anybody who is legally entitled to a ballot to not get a ballot and also to have that ballot counted.
Senator Cohen.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kiffmeyer, would you know, or maybe somebody else would know, how many Election Day registrants were there in Minnesota in the 2016 election?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Well, Mr. Chair, members, I do not have that exact number of how many there are in regards to same day. And you have to remember that in this case, it's those who register the 21 days before Election Day plus Election Day. And I don't have that number readily handy.
Senator Cohen.
Mr. Chairman.
I'll be glad to get it for you.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that I expected you would have it offhand. Could you recall from your years as Secretary of State as to an approximate number of Election Day registrants?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Mr. Chair, members, there are about 2.3 million possible voters in the state of Minnesota. If you take a 10% of that, remember, this is 2016, 4 years ago. I'm just taking an estimate of that. That would be 230,000. Can it be more than that? Absolutely. I don't have a log here with me of those exact calculations.
Senator Cohen.
And Mr. Chairman, Senator Kiffmeyer, my questions were not intended to try to test how exacting your numbers would be. I just wanted to get a kind of a ballpark. So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Kiffmeyer, let me make the point I wanted to make. So let's say, hypothetically, in 2016, if there were 1.6 million, 2 million voters in the presidential election, 10% would be about 200,000. So we don't know if that's a correct figure or not, and I'm not asking you to hazard a guess. Secretary Clinton defeated President Trump by approximately, I believe, 40,000 votes. And so if the election was a little bit closer nationally, because President Trump got, I think, 306 electoral votes, if so, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Kiffmeyer, let's say the Electoral College was much closer. If it was a 270, 265, something like that, would that mean that we would wait, the nation would wait 3 weeks or so then before knowing as to whom had been elected president? That's a rhetorical question because we don't know which voters would fit into the category and so on. But it suggests that there might be, in close elections, as was the case in Minnesota in 2016, an inability to determine who won Minnesota's electoral votes and potentially who was elected president, putting into a chain, what happens with the delay in transition, et cetera. So that's more of a comment. But Mr. Chairman, Senator Kiffmeyer, my particular question is, could you indicate the magnitude of the problem of what leads to this provision in terms of the need to cast a provisional vote that would count at a later date, if verified, as opposed to what's actually happened? What has been the magnitude of the problem that has been uncovered?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as to your first portion, the proposed bill that we have here would give it 1 day, 7 days after Election Day to process provisional ballots and count those ballots that through the system have been verified, just like others who have cast their ballots and are pre-registered. So that would be 1 week. We would not hold up the national process at all, reminding that until the state canvassing board acts upon the certification of the results, which happens anywhere from, around 2 weeks or so. So there's that process, but it's 1 week to do that. As far as the extent of the problem, first of all, I believe that we owe it to Minnesota people to make sure that every legally entitled voter gets their ballot and has their ballot counted. And if you are not entitled to a ballot, we owe it to the Minnesota people that if they're not entitled to it, if they're not eligible through residency, age, felony status, and other types of things, or they're impersonating or committing fraud, and you do that. And by the way, we owe it to Minnesota people to make sure that we can say to them, just like we do when we count the ballots and we recount them, we want to prove and show that things are accurate. And I think we should do the same thing with voter registration. Matter of fact, in our Minnesota Constitution, it says that those who are not eligible to vote should not be permitted to vote. So clearly in our Constitution, it states that the system itself should not permit those who are not entitled to a vote to get one, because that disenfranchises others who are legally entitled to cast their ballot.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cohen.
Senator Kiffmeyer, thank you. That wasn't my question. So if we were in court, I would object to your answers being non-responsive, and I think I'd be sustained, but we're not in court. So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Kiffmeyer, let me try again. What is the problem identified? Not what are we trying to accomplish hypothetically? What is the particular problem that has been demonstrated with Election Day registrants? What is the problem explicitly and numerically?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you're exactly right. This is not a court. And in court also, you wouldn't do hypotheticals either. One thing to realize is that we owe it to Minnesotans to conduct an election with integrity and with accuracy, and that those who are legally entitled to a ballot get one and counted, and those who are not should be kept out. The U.S. Supreme Court has documented that without question, in the history of our country, in the history of every single state, there are fraudulent ballots being cast. There are convictions. It is extremely difficult to get a conviction according to Minnesota law because you have to prove intent. And so the process that we have here is making sure that we have an accurate election, that it is an election with integrity, that all the other legally entitled voters are able to count on this system conducting the process with integrity. Putting numbers on that is not the way that I feel an election should be conducted. It should be conducted on principles of accuracy and integrity and on defense of the Minnesota voters.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Cohen, and then we have to move on.
yeah, I understand, Mr. Chairman, but I've asked the question a couple of different ways and received, with all due respect, Senator Kiffmeyer, the same non-answer. We're talking, obviously, two different paths. I was looking not for your explanation of why you're doing this. I was looking for a numerical explanation of what the problem is explicitly. And obviously, I've not received an answer to that, so I can only infer from the lack of response that this apparently is a solution in search of a problem until we can identify the explicit problem and what the numerical number is.
Okay, members, if we have questions, I'll continue with Nelson and then Benson, but if you have comments, we'll wait till the end of the bill.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, great staff has gotten me the information that I required or asked for in my first set of comments. So in 2002, when the Federal Help America Vote Act required states to offer provisional ballots, there was an exception, only an exception, for states that did already offer same-day voter registration in 1993 when the National Voter Registration Act became law. Those 6 states were Idaho, Minnesota, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. So there were only 6 states. And I want you to think about this exemption. It kind of reminds me of the University of Minnesota. How often do we say it's constitutionally autonomous, right? Because it existed before our state constitution. What we're seeing here is there were a handful of states, 6 to be exact, that already had same-day voter registration when the 2002 HAVA federal Act said that all states should have provisional ballots. So even of those 6 states, of which we were one, was exempted from provisional ballots, today, 3 of those have adopted provisional ballots. And I would say the question is not how many issues are there of people casting inaccurate ballots or ballots that were not, they were not eligible for. The real question is, elections come down to voter confidence. We need to have confidence in our elections. And I do not see how allowing everyone who comes to the poll to cast a ballot and then have that ballot verified through the provisional ballot system could do anything to disenfranchise a voter. The one thing it would do is it would build confidence in our elections. That is the cornerstone of our government. is our elections. It is critical that we step up like these other states that were also exempt from the federal mandate that all states have provisional ballots. I cannot understand why Minnesota would fight against provisional ballots. I think it does us harm, and I think it does us harm if we do not allow Minnesotans to vote, all Minnesotans to vote. But I also think it does us harm if those who have not gone through the registration process and been verified, if those votes are counted without being verified. So the provisional ballot part of this bill, I think, builds confidence in our elections. It makes sure that every eligible Minnesotan gets to vote, and quite frankly, Minnesotans who are not eligible get to vote. They just don't get to be counted in the till if they have not been deemed eligible through the provisional ballot process.
Okay, members, this has been discussed a lot in different committees here, and I know this is not the first time it's been around, so we're going to be more focused. We have to stay more focused on the fiscal nature. If you have a question, Senator Benson, real quickly. Otherwise, we're going to have staff go over the fiscal part.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the admonition to the committee. To Senator Cohen's point, I wanted to be clear that I don't appreciate disparate treatment of voters, that some people have their votes counted after they've properly registered, and other people have their votes counted whether they're properly registered or not. And so that, to me, is not okay. Let's have the same standard. You have to be a resident. You have to be in the district. Both voters get the same opportunity to vote. Both have the same requirement to demonstrate their eligibility before their ballot's counted.
Senator Newman, do you have a question with regards to the fiscal nature of this bill?
No, I do not, Mr. Chairman. However,
Real quick.
I wanted to respond to Senator Cohen's comment regarding the fact that this is a matter in search of a problem. I will, however, withhold my comments. I think we'll have a chance to discuss that again in this committee. So for purposes of this bill today, I'll just withhold my comments. We'll talk about it in deference to your request at a later date.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kiffmeyer, you do have a fiscal sheet here that staff is going to go over. I think you have a copy of it now. Everybody does.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Nauman and I have reviewed the sheet, and I think he's done an excellent job at putting things together in a simple, straightforward way, and I would appreciate his going over that.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, Senator Kiffmeyer, members, I'm looking off of the sheet that should have been handed out to you. It's got the yellow band across the top titled HAVA Appropriations, Transfers, and Revenue. There is a fiscal note in your packet. We took a look at it and realized there were a number of moving pieces and thought a spreadsheet might be helpful. This does tie to the excuse me, this does tie to the fiscal note, but I'll walk you through this. As the title suggests, there are three primary buckets that are happening in the bill. There's appropriations, there are transfers, and there are revenues. For the purposes of this discussion, I'll begin with the transfers. On line 9, the general fund transfers out 1.478. I'm doing a little rounding here for the purposes of this discussion. 1.478 of a transfer out of the general fund into the HAVA account, which resides in the special revenue fund. So those two net against each other. Then skipping back up to the appropriations, there, as has already been discussed, there's a $4 million appropriation for provisional ballots. That money is made available until, I believe now with the amendment, fiscal 23. Mr. Erickson will correct me if I get that wrong. Line 3, there is an administration and security of elections. That's the 1.478 that was transferred into the HAVA account that's being appropriated on line 3. Then effectively the federal money grants for cyber grants for election and cybersecurity of 7.390, again, a little bit of rounding. So then on lines 13 and 14, the sum by fund for the general fund is 5.478, and the 7.390 for the total on line 14. Then there are also revenue changes. The bill proposes to reduce revenues collected and credited to, not collected, but credited to the general fund beginning in fiscal year 21 of $374,000. Those amounts are credited to the special revenue fund in the technology and cybersecurity account. So those again net against each other, but it's a scorable loss to the general fund and a credit to the account. Again, all totals are netted out on lines 24 and 25. We hope this helps members understand the transactions that are occurring in the bill.
Members, any questions on the spreadsheet? Senator Cohen.
So, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Nauman, how was the figure of $4 million from the general fund arrived at for the provisional ballots?
Mr. Nauman.
Mr. Chair and Senator Cohen, I think I'll let the author speak to that. I'm here to describe the transactions. I'm not entirely sure what the derivation of that number is.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So you have a fiscal note in front of you, all right? And so the amount of money needed to do the SVR system, to do the programming, is $144,500. The $4 million, though, is then after subtracting that means $3,855,500 is available for grants to counties and municipalities in regards to the direct costs of equipment, ballot box for provisional ballots, or say the envelopes and such, reminding you that all of this work goes on a continuous basis as well. Okay. Yes, and also $680,000 is available for a public education campaign to make people aware of the importance of pre-registering, and also that provisional ballots will be available. So that funding is there, but the money, Senator Cohen, the amount of money, I wanted to be sure that there was a generous amount of money in this account. We stretched it out to 4 years instead of 1 year, I think was in there on the initial bill. But the intent was always to get back the fiscal note, take a look at that, and I think $4 million at this point is the amount that we'll continue to use in this particular bill for mainly direct local government expenses.
Senator Cohen.
So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Kiffmeyer, and thanks for pointing that out. And I note in the fiscal note, as you indicated, the $144,000 for state work, and then about $3.8 million for grants to counties and municipalities. So is that an estimate, or is that what's been, how is that figure determined in terms of what counties and municipalities would need for compliance?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The work that the counties do, they already are required by law to enter voter registration applications, and that information are already required by law to do that. So that is their normal and customary work. The additional supplies for provisional ballots are what the money is for, and I'll certainly be able to hear back from counties. They have access to comment in regards to that, and this is the amount that we have placed in here for this particular local government supplies at this time.
Okay. Senator Marty.
Mr. Chair, Senator Cohen, I noticed on the fiscal note also, it says the bulk of the operating costs are going to fall on local governments, counties, and cities. It's not possible for the Secretary of State's office apparently to calculate that, but that $4 million is apparently, it says in the fiscal note, it's to mitigate the costs, and it also says the bulk of the costs are going to be on local governments. And Mr. Chair, while I've got the microphone, I'd like to request a roll call on the bill. I I think this idea of the provisional ballots, I just think a lot of the people who are feeling disenfranchised in the current system already, the idea that they're going to cast a vote and that it might be counted is, even when they are perfectly legitimately able to vote and they're taking an oath under penalty of perjury that they are an eligible voter, that their vote may not count. I think that disenfranchises a lot of people. So I want to have this as a recorded vote.
Recorded vote requested, be granted. Members, we have had great, robust discussion here on the bill. So I think at this point in time, if there's no further discussion, Senator Newman moves that Senate File 3275 as amended be recommended to pass and be placed on general orders. Seeing no discussion, would the clerk take the roll?
Senator Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Yes.
Senator Cohen. Senator Benson.
Aye.
Senator Champion. Senator Franzen. Senator Hayden. Senator Kiffmeyer.
Aye.
Senator Limmer. Senator Marty.
No.
Senator Nelson. Senator Newman.
Yes.
Senator Westrom.
Yes.
Senator Nelson votes yes. Thank you.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 2 nays, the bill is approved and agreed to, and we will be sending this directly to the floor.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr. Chairman
Kiffmeyer.
and members.
Senator Chamberlain, Senate File 4073.
Good
Welcome
morning.
to my committee. Our
morning.
committee. I was just in front of his committee this morning, members.
Committee. I have 2 amendments and just want to know how you want to do this. One is a delete all amendment to 4073, and then I have a small amendment for that delete all. How would you like to proceed with that?
We will wait before Senator Ingebrigtsen moves the amendment. We don't have it in our package. Do I have it? I don't have anything, actually. Okay. So the A2 members, was it in their packet? Yes. Okay, the A2 amendment is in the packet. Senator Ingebrigtsen moves the A2 amendment, the author's amendment. Any questions on the A2 amendment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion is prevailed. Senator Chamberlain, and that's a delete all, and then you have another amendment too. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, A3 goes to the A2.
Okay, and that is being passed out right at this moment.
Do you have A3 there? It has this, there's an intermediate step for some due process for their variance stuff. And Madam Chair, just briefly, the A3 is a, oh, I'm sorry.
The second, Senator Chamberlain, not everybody has the A3 yet. Okay, please do the A3.
Madam Chair and members, A3 is, you'll see in the bill that we have, there's 2 types of exceptions, a shall accept and a may exception. The shall exceptions were agreed on by all parties. Then you have the may exceptions, but there's a kind of an intermediate piece with the may exceptions, and those are for research facilities and the research facilities and facilities that process TCE for waste disposal. It just gives those companies a little due process through the MPCA's current variance rules. So it just adds a little due process of that intermediate part, because there was concern about research facilities being separate from hospitals. So it's kind of an intermediate step. That's what that is.
Thank you. Any questions on the A3 amendment? Senator Ingebrigtsen moves the A3 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion prevails. Senator Uyghur, I did not recognize you before. My apologies. Thank you. I thought it was council. So welcome to the committee. And
You've been promoted.
to whoever would like to start on the bill, now that we have it in order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the sixth stop for this in 2 years, plus it went to the floor twice. And it's been a result, what you see in front of you, a result of extensive negotiations, discussions since the end of session last year during the conference committee, and several meetings between the chamber representatives, the citizens group, department, and both the House and the Senate. So what we have here is a bipartisan collaborative effort to negotiate an agreement to ban TCE, trichloroethylene, from use in the state of Minnesota, mostly in the production side, industrial process side. So it's been almost a year, a lot of work, collaborative, bipartisan. Not everybody gets what they want in this bill. The department will claim that there are things they may not like. It's not exactly the governor's bill. It's not exactly the House bill, but that's what negotiations are. So to be clear, this is a ban, and it starts June 1, 2022. In the interim, there's a flexible process to have some exceptions with due process, and it ultimately gives the commissioner and the department authority for the most egregious offenders, the largest users out there. It's a partnership between the state, MPCA, and others to make sure this is a smooth process and does not destroy businesses or jobs, but also at the same time protecting citizens from a dangerous chemical. So it's a necessary due process procedure so everybody involved is protected. Mandatory exceptions already mentioned. That's the shall. Those were agreed on by the department and the governor and all other parties. There are some discretionary exceptions, but the department has ultimate authority and using existing variance regulation 7,000.7000. The chamber, the citizens groups, the citizen group, and most of us agree 95% on this bill. There'll be some minor exceptions, but in total, we agree. This is a ban. It's been collaborative, bipartisan. This is a good step forward to start this process. Now, as far as money, and this is the money committee, it is all from the environmental fund, 1.2 million. There are two pieces to that. One piece is for assistance that helping these companies get off of this chemical. So the feasibility study, they may reimburse or help these companies pay for that via the MINTAP that exists at the University of Minnesota. It is not mandatory that they do, but they may need some assistance. And the second part is to staff and help the MPCA conduct go through this process of contacting the businesses, following up, working with them, and coming up with health standards and enforcement procedures if need be. So 1.2 million from the environmental fund. And that money, a lot of that money there is about 7 million was placed there, if I'm correct, from the penalty on water gremlin. So it's water gremlin penalty money went into the environmental fund, and I think this is an appropriate use of those dollars to carry out this process and start moving forward. If I may, so that's my statement. If I may, it's up your discretion, Madam Chair, but if you wish for Senator Uyghur to.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Say a
Senator
word.
Chamberlain. Senator Uyghur.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Chamberlain. This is a work in progress, and we're working together to try to reach that sweet spot so that there is a compromise reached by the end of session. You know what happened last year, and the citizens, understandably, were very frustrated, and it's our strong intent to get this resolved. I do have another bill, actually, that I'm the author of, which has a different take, though there are many similarities in it, but it's the bill that the PCA has. It did not have a hearing, but we're working together. I want to make sure you know that. There are some provisions that I would still like to change. It's my hope that this will go to the floor soon and that there will be a conference committee where it will be addressed on its merits with the companion bill, which it's lined up with, rather than a omnibus bill, which really complicated things and was so frustrating to citizens, not only in our districts, but in many others that are potentially impacted in the state. So it's making progress, the right direction. Let's continue that. And in that spirit of good faith, I support this.
Thank you, Senator Uyghur. And before we go to questions, Mr. Naumann.
Madam Chair and members, I just do want to highlight one thing about a difference between what the bill is proposing to do and what the pricing on the fiscal note was. The fiscal note estimated 1.288 of costs beginning in fiscal 21, 515, repeating in 22, and then 258. The bill has proposed to make a total appropriation, essentially summing all those numbers and making the total available for 3 years. So it's a little bit different than the fiscal note, but the pricing is the same as the totals in the fiscal note.
Thank you, Mr. Naumann. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it just should be noted that this has been, as the senators have both said, been moving forward over the last last year. And as the Environment Chair, I wasn't terribly intimately involved, but I sure had a lot of emails. I got an awful lot of emails about what are you going to do, what are you going to do, and since the collaboration's been going together, getting together, working together, and having the town meetings out there, I have not received anything as of recent. So what they're doing here is working together to get this done, and the public's tempo has certainly calmed down, and maybe Senator Uyghur won't agree with that, but I can only speak for myself, and I did get an awful lot of them. The question I have is the FTE of 1.82. I see it reduces in 0.91 in 23. Senator Chamberlain, do you know if this is going to be an ongoing employee, or once this TCE is cleaned up or banned, whatever the term is, by 2023, is that position going to go away?
Senator Chamberlain, Senator Uyghur.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Ingebrigtsen, perhaps the department can speak to that directly, but from the testimony in the Finance Committee last week, that these are not general fund dollars, so they'd have to find some other way to support that FTE, because this is environmental fund money. So it's not, in my humble opinion, it's not anticipated to continue unless they need to come back and appropriate some funds to continue the work.
We do have Mr. Craig McDonald from the Pollution Control Agency that would like to testify and perhaps answer this question. Welcome, Mr. McDonald.
Madam Chair and members, for the record, my name is Craig McDonald, and I'm with the MPCA. I'll provide some brief remarks and then address the senator's question. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify on behalf of this bill as amended. Banning TCE use is an important step to protect Minnesota's air and water, and it's a priority for the MPCA. The MPCA's preferred position is the governor's language, which was introduced by Senator Uyghur. We believe that language will best protect human health and the environment. It implements a 2-year ban on TCE, so a duration of 2 years where companies have to comply. If companies are unable to comply with that ban, they are able to seek a 2-year extension, which is an appropriate response. We believe it provides them enough pathway. There are some similarities with Senator Chamberlain's bill in terms of the exemptions provided for academic and medical research facilities and some of the other exemptions there. However, as the senator noted, we do remain concerned about this bill because it's a different approach than we had agreed on at the last year during session, and we believe that the governor's approach, as introduced by Senator Uyghur, will ensure that TCE is out of the system as soon as possible, and that any replacements that may be identified, replacement chemicals or processes, are also demonstrated to be less toxic than TCE. So that's an important note. We'll continue to work with the legislature on a solution to this. We're also continuing to use the funds that were appropriated during the last session to voluntarily reduce TCE emissions from companies. We've released a report in January which shows the work on that effort. To the senator's question, the FTEs listed here would be unclassified, so they would be there for the duration of the work.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that. And just a comment, and then I'm going to be done. This substance has been used in industry for a long time, and to me, this is a pretty good way to resolve it. I don't think people are just falling over and dying here and there from this particular substance. And when the industry is required to change, it doesn't change overnight. So I think this is a good bill, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Senator Ingebrigtsen. Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, I'm not on Senator Ingebrigtsen's committee, and I didn't see Senator Uyghur's alternative bill, but it sounds like a better approach to me, and I wish we could take a look at that. My question, I guess, maybe it's a comment, but I think it's a question. On page 2, line 15, it says that you can grant exception. It looks
Senator Marty, you're on the amendment, right? A2 amendment?
A2.
Yes.
Madam Chair, that they can grant an exception if the facility performs a feasibility study. It doesn't find anything commercially available at a reasonable cost as an alternative. And then it sounds like it's granting a permanent exception. Maybe I'm reading that wrong, but it looks that way. And then on top of that, it says taxpayers are going to pay the bill for the people doing these studies. And if we decide a substance is worth banning because it's dangerous, because it's carcinogen or whatever, we decide it's dangerous and we want to ban it, and somebody says, hey, look, I'd like to look for an alternative to it, and I can't find one, and so, well, can I keep using it? And we're going to fund, the taxpayers are going to fund that study. This is $600,000 for reimbursing folks who are doing these feasibility studies to get exempted from, because by doing the study, they can be exempted from the standard. I just have never heard of it where the taxpayers are going to pay for a study that allows somebody to keep polluting.
Senator Chamberlain, Senator Uyghur.
Madam Chair, Senator Marty, I know you haven't been involved, so I'll keep that in mind here. First, the exception. It says, first it bans, first it sends out, they send out a letter to the permittees. They have to respond within 30 days. Then if they have if they are using TCE, they have to, within 90 days, submit a feasibility study to the commissioner. There are certain exceptions that the commissioner will grant. There are 3 exceptions they shall grant, and those exceptions were agreed to by the governor, commissioner, and the rest of us. The next piece is the may grant. On 2.15, you may grant. This gives the commissioner great discretion and authority to review those feasibility studies. In other words, you perform a feasibility study, it does not guarantee you an exception. You perform the feasibility study, go to the commissioner and the department, review that with the commissioner and the department, and the commissioner and the department have full discretion here to work with that business to determine whether or not, A, they can continue to use TCE, and if so, what are those parameters and how will they do it using the existing variance regulations. And secondly, they could say, well, we found a different chemical, and then the department will work with using current procedures and practices to determine if that chemical is safe and determine what the business has to do to implement safety, the safety precautions and the necessary steps to make sure that chemical is safe and not harming the public. So doing the feasibility study does not equal granting an exception. Doing a feasibility study just gets you to the next level in which the department will follow a due process procedure, but in the end, the power and the leverage comes to and lays with the commissioner and the department, but they have to follow current process of variance. Secondly, taxpayers are not footing the bill, Senator Marty. The fiscal note clearly states the environmental fund. The environmental fund was made fat last year after Water Gremlin put $7 million in it when they were fined by the commissioner and the department for violating their agreement, one of the harshest, most severe fines in state history. So it's not taxpayer money. This is Water Gremlin money put in there by Water Gremlin as a result of their violations. So there's no taxpayer money here, and we are looking, finally, we are looking for a way to partner off of this. The vast majority of the companies are functioning within the law, reasonably, due diligence, protecting the public. We don't want to punish them or their employees because Water Gremlin was a bad actor, but we do want to get the bad chemical out of the system if there are alternatives. Due process, exceptions, reasonable partnership, helping out, to get this done, saving jobs, keeping the public safe, and we're not using taxpayer money.
Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, when you pay a fine, when you go to court, when you pay any criminal penalty, I think that money turns over to the taxpayers. It's taxpayer funds.
Well, that's a funny way of doing it.
Senator Chamberlain. Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, that's taxpayer funds. Water Gremlin did some very bad practices, and they paid a big fine for it. It's not their money. It's taxpayer money. The funds in the environmental account go to taxpayer needs, public needs, such as addressing these chemical problems. This is a study, you're saying the commissioner, yeah, they can still not allow it because there's a feasibility study, but it says they can grant an exception if they do. I frankly am not comfortable with the fact that commissioners looking forward in the future, that commissioners are always going to do it. And this allows them to give a permanent variance as far as that reads to me. There's nothing in here saying that, well, 2 years later, I heard from Mr. McDonald from MPCA that the governor's bill or Senator Uyghur's bill had a 2-year extension. This is a permanent exception to it. And it says that the commissioner may reimburse, the commissioner is using public funds to reimburse people for this feasibility study that allows them to get an exception. I think that's true. And so, Madam Chair, I'd like to offer an amendment, and maybe I can ask Mr. Nauman or Senate Council to help with it. But I think I'd like to move to delete lines 2.15 through 2.22, clause C, and subdivision 6, the reimbursement for the feasibility study, and then
Hold on one second. 2.15.
2.15 through 2.22.
22, okay.
2.30 to 2.32. And then in the appropriations section, cut the first dollar amount on 3.3 by 600,000 and delete the sentence that begins "of this amount."
Okay. Senator Marty moves the deletion of the A2 amendments, page 2, line 15 through 22, page 2, line 30 through 32, page 3, line, I'm sorry. Oh, on page 3, remove the effective date on line 1, and on line 5, of this amount, that entire sentence to 3.7. Is that correct?
And change the dollar.
And change the 1.288 on line 3 of 3.3 to 600,000. Is everybody clear as mud on that one?
Madam Chair, I think
6. Hold on a second, Senator Nelson. Mr. Nauman.
So, Madam Chair, it's my understanding he wants to reduce 1288 to 688, thereby
688.
reducing it by 600,000.
I see. Okay. Senator Marty, is that correct?
That's good.
Any discussion on that oral amendment to the A2 amendment?
Madam Chair?
Can we go through the changes again? The proposed
Absolutely,
changes?
absolutely. Mr. Bowden.
Madam Chair and members, just restating Senator Marty's amendment for you on page 2, line 15 of the A2 delete everything amendment. Delete paragraph C, and that extends through page 2, line 22. On page 2, delete lines 30 to 32. On page 3, delete line 1. On page 3, line 3, delete 1,288,000 and insert 688,000. And on page 3, line 5, delete everything after the period. And on page 3, delete line 6.
Okay. Questions to the oral amendment? Senator Ingebrigtsen?
Yeah, I'm wondering, Senator Marty, maybe you can, maybe I'm missing it here, but you want to do away with the feasibility study. I guess I would ask for the author, his comments on this oral amendment.
Thank you. Before it comments, Mr. Bowden.
Madam Chair and members, my mistake. I had thought the effective date on page 3, line 1 applied to paragraph C, and in fact, the bill still will need that immediate effective date, so remove the instruction to delete page 3, line 1 from the way I restated the amendment.
Mr. Bowden, is 3.7, line 3.7 still effective?
Madam Chair and members, that's correct. That's
Okay.
still necessary.
Okay. Senator Marty, is that what you're asking for?
Madam Chair, that sounds right.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Senator Chamberlain, Senator Uyghur?
Madam Chair, members, so of course I disagree with this proposed amendment strongly. It would destroy a year's worth of work and an agreement that the citizens group and the chamber and a bipartisan group of the House and the Senate agreed to, at least in 95%. If Senator Marty wishes to not ban this substance, if he wishes this to go forward, if he wishes to stop the process now, then he can vote for this amendment. This bill is very solid, negotiated, and it bans TCE with reasonable parameters. If he wishes not to do that, if he wishes to put hundreds or thousands of people out of work, then he'll vote for this. But if you wish to ban this and move it forward and start the process, then I would say reject this amendment. There are 113 facilities identified by the MPCA in the report that was previously mentioned. Of those 113, 87 are byproducts of waste disposal. 26 use it in production. Only 8 were violating in substantial, meaningful, material ways the requirements, health-based requirements and values and risks and limits. Of those 8, 4 have stopped using it. So we're talking about a handful of organizations and businesses that are using this in large quantities, and some of those are already starting to reduce the use. Our goal is to ban this and get it out of the system as much as we can, and this bill does that. So I would reject Senator Marty's position. One last thing, I have a list here of comparing the two bills. There are, of the 13 areas, there's 6 that are very similar or we agree. We have 2 stronger provisions, including the date that not allowing it to go to 2023 or 2024, and 2 that are really negligible. So overall, there's great compromise and agreement with the governor's proposal as carried by Representative Wozlik and Senator Uyghur, and that the department is supporting. So if I would reject the amendment, members.
Senator Uyghur?
Well, Madam Chair, this is Senator Chamberlain. He's the chief author, and there are points that I agree with for Senator Marty, but this is, as I told you, the bill I have is not before us. The bottom line for me is I want to get this to conference committee where we can further get that sweet spot between industry and the citizen groups. And I believe we're getting close. The agency does have questions, regarding the allocation from the environmental fund. There will be a different version coming from the other body. Let's get this to conference, and that's where I'm at.
Senator Murray.
Madam Chair, Senator Chamberlain criticized my amendments from using both sides of an argument they're opposing. One was that this was going to stop a ban on TCE. If this amendment went on, we wouldn't be banning TCE. And then he also said that this amendment will throw thousands of people out of work, I think was your comment. And I can't think if this amendment would stop the bill, it can't throw thousands of people out of work. And then you talked about all the businesses that are using it for cleanup of waste stuff, and that one seems to be an automatic exemption under this. So, and you said how many are already doing this. So first you were saying how many people would be thrown out of work, and then you also said the opposite, that this wouldn't do anything. So you can't have it both ways. And my suggestion is the reality is that we're going to move forward. We're going to keep working on this. And I just have a real problem with the idea that we're going to use public funds to pay somebody to do a study which enables them to get a permanent exemption from a safety requirement, which is bad stuff. And I think you are agreeing it's bad stuff and that we want to get rid of it. So I see, you can't argue against, both ways. One, this is going to do nothing, it's going to stop the process, and two, it's going to throw thousands of people out of work. Those are contradictory points you're making. So it's kind of hard to respond to both at the same time, but I will say that I don't think that this stops the process, nor do I think that this thing throws thousands of people out of work. It simply says we're not going to give permanent exceptions because you did a study that paid for by taxpayers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Marty, the Environmental Fund is used for various reasons, and the monies collected there are also come from various means. And the bottom line is it's not a cash cow for the MPCA, even though sometimes you wonder how they protect it. But the money going into this particular fund is money that was fined by the MPCA, levied onto the water gremlin business, and now it's being used to try and clean this up statewide. And, I think the MPCA should be looking at working with the public and working with the industry instead of just constantly working against them, and not just take off with this fine money and run and spend it on something else. It's a great place to spend the money if it's not being taken out of the general fund. And yes, in fact, it does turn into the taxpayers' money after a fine. But I think any ordinary common sense person out there will understand that if the fine money is going to be used to take care of the problem, they'd understand that and they'd agree with it. So this is a good place to take the money from.
And Senator Marty.
And Madam Chair, my point is only that this fund is not to clean up the problem. That's fund that businesses can use to study. The half of the funding, I'm not complaining about that because that's the point of it. The other half of the funding is to reimburse people for doing these studies that allow them to get exemptions from the ban. So I strongly disagree. I'm glad you recognize it's public funds, but the only thing I'm disagreeing with, and you attack the PCA for working against people. I haven't talked to the PCA about this. I haven't done anything of the sort, and they don't seem to be, I assume their bill doesn't have a thing where the taxpayers are funding these studies to exempt people from the standard. But I don't think they're working against it. It sounds like they've been negotiating for the last year.
So Senator Nelson, and is this to the amendment? Because we need to vote on the amendment.
In a sense, it's to the amendment, so I'll be just very brief. There's one thing that I heard, which was trying to get exemptions to these dangerous chemicals and the concern about that. And I want to say, you know, that's what people are concerned about, is their health and the risks. And I just wanted, one thing I haven't heard discussed in this amendment or in general, when we're talking about these exceptions, I just think it must be noted that according to the legislation on 1.31, beginning there on those exceptions, that these exceptions can only be used where compliance with the health-based value and health risk limits for TCE as established by the Department of Health are demonstrated. So when we're talking about possible exemptions, it's only where it's already been demonstrated that these potential exemptions have met the health-based value and health risk limits for TCE as established by the Department of Health. And I just hadn't heard that in the discussion today. And for most people listening today, I think that's an important thing because I think that's what they're interested in.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Okay, we have the A2, Senator Marty's oral amendment to the A2 amendment. Is there further clarification needed on that oral amendment, or are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of Senator Marty's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. No. The motion does not prevail. Further questions, comments, amendments? Okay. Senator Chamberlain or Senator Weaker, final comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members, for the discussion. This is a ban on TCE. While it is not perfect, it is not written in stone. It can be adjusted at a later date. I hope that other parties involved will see that and we can move forward to take this out of the system and keep the public safe, and as well as continuing the manufacturing process and keeping jobs. So it's a good balance. The neighborhood citizens group had agreed to it last. I spoke to them just this last Monday. So it's a step forward. It's the right thing to do. Thank you for your time, and I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you.
Senator Weaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Senator Chamberlain.
Okay. Thank you very much for you both. Senator Ingebrigtsen?
No other further discussion, excuse me. I move that Senate File 2997 as amended to be passed and, oops, I'm sorry. Which one? That's why we have this excellent staff here to correct us here. A couple of bills here. Senate File 4783? 4073, wow. I apologize, it's been a long week. Pass as amended, to be passed and to be referred to the floor.
Thank you. Senator Ingebrigtsen moves that Senate File 4073 as amended be recommended to pass and placed on general orders. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion prevails. Thank you very much, you both. Okay, members, we have one more that we would like to finish, Senate File 3013. And we have thoroughly discussed this bill, Senator Weber. This is your bill dealing with the natural gas and Senator Ingebrigtsen, would you like to make a motion to take the bill off the table? We laid it on the table last week. Thank you. On to Senator Ingebrigtsen's motion to take Senate File 3013 off the table. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion prevails. The bill is before us. Thank you, Senator Weber, for coming back and being patient.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, as you mentioned, we went over this bill the first time that I was here with it. Questions arose as a result of the fiscal note, and the company has visited with the department and went through it. And of course, the company who would be conducting the pilot program is going to be picking up the charges for that, so there is no cost to the general fund in that respect. They have agreed that they will pay those charges, and therefore we are back before the committee asking for this bill to be approved and placed in general orders.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Weber. And I just would like to make a comment for the record that I did find the fiscal note from the department as somewhat abusive to the ratepayer, even though it probably doesn't seem like a lot going forward, but I still, reading through the fiscal note, I find these studies very expensive, and and I just want to make a point that just because the ratepayer is paying for this, I believe there was some cushion involved, and that's why it was laid on the table. And as I said last week, they made a very uncomplicated bill, very good bill, complicated by their overreach in their accounting measures. Does anybody have a comment or questions on this bill? And we are not going to have testimony. We did have it before. Okay. Well, final comments? Senator Weber?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe this is a good bill. It's been had strong bipartisan support in the other committee, and I look forward to taking it to the floor.
Thank you very much. Senator Ingebrigtsen, would you like to make the motion? Senator Ingebrigtsen moves that Senate File 3013 be recommended pass and placed on general orders. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion prevails.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Committee.
Congratulations, Senator Weber. Members, that is it for right now. That concludes our business. Keep an eye on your email. I don't think we are going to have any hearings next week in order for the committees to be able to finish their work going forward and meet deadline. And with that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.